welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Taylor and today we're doing my May reading wrap up. But before I hop in the video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you love all things books. So we're going to start out with a little bit of some reading stats, reading updates. May was a pretty good reading month. I made it through 6 books and I did start 1. I am going to unhaul one of the books I did read and we'll get to that when we get there. I will say this one had some of my lower rated reads of the year and I haven't gotten a 5-star yet. But overall I read 2 dystopian sci-fi, 1 just straight fiction, 1 thriller, 2 romance. So like a mixture of genres this year. The colors on my notes right now are getting very, very colorful. I read 4 physically, 2 on Kindle, and then I read 4 YA, 2 adult, and only 1 was a queer read. So my highest rating was 4.75 and my lowest rating was 3 stars. And one of the books I did read was a little novella, so that's that. So I guess without further ado, let's discuss what I read this month. The first book I finished this month was Unravel Me by taylormadebooks. This is the second book in the Shatter Me series, and this is a YA dystopian sci-fi series. I'm not going to go into too much about what the plot of this book is, obviously, because spoilers, second book in the series, but if you don't know anything about the Shatter Me series, this book follows Juliet, whose touch is deadly. She spent her whole life basically afraid to touch anyone for fear of doing something bad, and when one day something goes wrong, she is sent to a facility where she's essentially jailed for over a year all by herself. But when she is brought in by the reestablishment, the new dystopian government that is in charge of everything, to become essentially their torture machine, things start to change for her very rapidly. This book gets a little more into the romance situation of things. There is a little like spicy-esque scene near the end, so this is YA, but just understand, I think the further they go on and the further they get older, the more things they add in there. But I will say, Warner, I see the vision, loving it. The ending of this book had me gripped. I thought maybe 5 stars, but in the end I ended up giving it 4.75. Not quite at the 5-star level, but I'm excited to see what Ignite Me brings us. Then I read Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This is a YA coming-of-age novel, and I will say, just understand, check your trigger warnings for this one. I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. There is death of an animal in here, which I didn't know going in, and if anyone knows anything about the reader community, that is like one of the things like, I will not pick up a book, things like that. I mean, not necessarily it will deter me from reading it, but I just didn't know that, so I want to put that out there. But do check your trigger warnings for this one, because it can get very dark. This one is following Frances, who is head girl of her school. She's essentially top of her class. She is very much so weighed down by the need to perform well and get into the best colleges and so on and so forth. This is English, so maybe university, I'm not quite sure. But one day, while she is listening to a podcast, she starts to form a friendship with Alid, who is her neighbor across the way. And Alid's dealing with some heavy stuff. And throughout this friendship, they start to discover a lot of things about each other. And they start to change each other for the better and for worse. This book, I ended up giving 4 stars in it. This one is queer. We have a bisexual main character in Frances. There's a lot of things that go on in this. It's like a lot of like drama and stuff going on in here. And there's a little mystery element in it. I enjoyed it, but I think when it comes to like super dramatic works anyways, it doesn't necessarily hold my attention as much as something super like rom-com-y. So that's sort of how it played out. Then I read the sequel to None Shall Sleep, and that is Some Shall Break by Ellie Marney. I do believe you have to read these in orders. It is a series. While I do think the stories and the serial killers that they fall can be held on their own separately, you get a lot of context and introduction to the characters in book 1. So do read these in order. And obviously, since I would recommend that these get read in order, I'm only going to discuss about None Shall Sleep. In None Shall Sleep, we're introduced to Emma and Travis, who are essentially 2 teenagers who are brought into the BAU, or the early BAU, to profile juvenile serial killers. And while they're in the process of profiling these juvenile serial killers, they are brought into a current and active case, which brings them to have to interview one of the most notorious juvenile serial killers, Simon Gutmanson. And we get to see a lot of them in this book. I will say do check trigger warnings for this book, particularly because it does talk a lot about SA, and anything to do with serial killers can get graphic and gory. This is labeled as YA, but I would recommend this for 18 plus just because of some of the graphic descriptions and content that are mentioned in this one. I ended up giving it 4.75 stars. I think when I get super uneasy in a book, even though I know that technically a book eliciting a lot of feelings for me should give it 5 stars, there's something about super uneasy feelings and I'm like, no, I'm not going to give you 5 stars. So I will say I love that this book really is touching on like the threats to women and like how women have to constantly be on guard and protect themselves at society, and that really does like explore that because obviously our serial killer in this book is directly targeting women. So I do highly recommend this series. Just be careful with like the content and the trigger warnings because some of the stuff in this series in particular can get very hard. Then we have Manila Takes Manhattan by Carla de Guzman. This is a book that is set during the pandemic, so there's a lot of discussion of like pandemic things going on. So if you're someone who's like, I don't want to revisit that time period, do not pick this one up. But in this one, we are following Mon Mendoza and Olivia Angeles. So Mon is from the Philippines and he has been contracted to do the music or the production for this new musical that Olivia is starring in. She is Filipina American. And one night when they're in the hallway, just like waiting for Mon to get his room, they don't quite recognize who each other is. So they have a little bit of a one-night stand situation. And then once they realize who they are, things get a little messy from there with little friends with benefits short situation. And then, the romance ensues from there. This one is a little fun romance. It's quick and short. Well, actually, I'm going to say, for a romance that is very short, the chapters are super long. Like, when I was reading on my Kindle, it said, like, reading time, like, somewhere around, like, 30 to 40 minutes. But there's only 12 chapters in here. So there's that. This one, if you're looking for super green flag men, Mon is your guy. If you love great communication and all that, this is great. My problem with this one, because I gave it 3.5 stars, is the fact that one, the pacing was kind of terribly off for me. And then that third act breakup really just ticks me off because it's like, they've had great communication from here on out. Why it just seemed a little bit out of character for me. So this one is a book that I'm going to unhaul. Not quite my favorite romance, but you know what? 3.5 stars. And I think I gave it two chili spice. The spice scenes in here are actually pretty good. So if you're looking for that, that's what I would recommend it. So not for me, but for someone else. Then I read the Fracture Me novella. This follows Adam's POV at the end of Unravel Me and a little bit after that. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I honestly gave it 3 stars for the sheer fact that I'm like, yes, it added a little bit to Adam's character, but I kind of felt it was just a little unnecessary. Whereas the first novella that we got, which was Destroy Me, I felt like that one really gave us a lot of context and information surrounding Warner's character. I don't know if it's just like a Warner versus Adam thing, but I think Adam just kind of got lost in the sauce because there's really nothing that gets added to him. I will say seeing some of his thoughts during some of his interactions that we see at the end of Unravel Me was interesting to me. And I finished this literally on the last day of May, My Vampire Plus One by Jenna Levine. Listen, if you want silly, absurd, goofy, this one is for you. This is a sequel to My Roommate is a Vampire, although this is an interconnected standalone series, so you kind of could read them out of order, but I always say read them in order because there's a little bit of context added there. In this one, we are following Reginald, who we are introduced to in book 1. He's kind of this fun-loving, just sort of like quirky vampire character who, a couple hundred years ago got into trouble for doing a bunch of random things. So now this group of vampires is trying to hunt him down over a bit of a misunderstanding. So he asked Amelia Collins, who's an accountant, one day, help him out. Be like, can you just help hide me from these people? And then after that strange encounter, Amelia asked him to be her fake date to an upcoming family function. And while they are fake dating, lots of funny things ensue. And of course, romance follows. Listen, this book series that she gave out, one, it's probably better for the fall time. I will say that. I just really wanted to read it. A lot of people will probably find cringy and cheesy, and I can see that because there's a lot of little stupid little things that take place in here. But I eat that shit up. And for someone who doesn't like vampire romances, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't love super angsty things. They kind of get on my nerves. I was not a Twilight girly, and the more I look back on it, Twilight's just not my thing. That's just not the vibes. So if I'm going to read a vampire romance, I'm going to need silly. I'm going to need super silly. And I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars and 1 chili spice. There's a little less spice in this one than there was the last one, but these books, in terms of like adult romances, the spice is actually quite minimal. And those are all the books I read this past month. I am currently in the middle of reading The Poppy War, so you will see my thoughts on that next month. And the list of things for June to read are quite high, but since I am starting my new job, my hours are a little bit limited. So we'll see what reading gets done, but do understand there will be some good queer recs coming your way soon. And I'll see y'all in the next video.